Who are the best running back prospects in the 2022 NFL Draft, and what does that mean for fantasy football, and what teams could they be targeted by? It's time to find out right here, right now, as another episode of Locked On Fantasy Football begins right now.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for SportingNews.com. One of my other tasks there when I write NFL on Sporting News is looking at the draft and free agent classes here. So we broke down the free agent, top available players at the skill positions and beyond offensively and on special teams last week. We're now looking at the top available players at the top skill positions there offensively in the 2022 draft. We're at running back. So I do have a good list of my top 7, but I go beyond that here with looking at the picks here in 2020. So it's 2022. And looking at it, we have a lot of good available running backs for sure, and we'll break those down for you. So I have the top 6, 7, getting into that, and then going beyond that here on Locked On Fantasy Football. So we'll do that here, break what their initial fantasy football and long-term value can be when they get to the league. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are free and available for you on all platforms. All right, let us go to my number 1 running back on the board. And a lot of people have this guy pretty high up. He had a breakout season for the Michigan State Spartans, was a Heisman contender for a while, but faded kind of late there with the Spartans not doing as well. But he's Kenneth Walker of Michigan State. Very explosive complete back. This is a guy that I think could be a 20 to 25 touch back per game. So we're going to look at his role with great interest here for sure. And part of it is, does he land in a Najee Harris situation where he's a clear-cut workhorse there, a la Harris for the Steelers, getting all the touches, easy no-brainer RB2 who morphed into an RB1 based on his usage and durability, even though the running wasn't all that effective there because of the offensive line issues in Pittsburgh. Just the volume alone was pretty big for Harris, and he was involved in a lot of the passing game as well as scoring in the red zone. So that is a great scenario for him. The disappointing scenario would be a Javonte Williams scenario. Well, we just have to wait for it for year 2, where now the Broncos moving on from Melvin Gordon with their new coaching staff figure it's going to be a lot of Javonte Williams. So Williams and Harris should carry over as the best rookie running backs here in year 2, have bigger years overall. With Harris getting better support from the offensive line, probably a more dangerous downfield passing game without Ben Roethlisberger, with whoever's in there. And Williams just having the backfield alone and getting volume to build on his very productive season playing off Melvin Gordon. So Kenneth Walker fits right in between those guys. I think he can do it all. He's got an explosive part to his game. He can get the tough yards between the tackles. He can bounce it outside. He follows his blocks very well, very patient runner. He's been around a few years here, played at Wake Forest before he transferred to Sparty. So a lot of experience, good vision, good burst, everything you need there to be a feature back and therefore produce at a high level and therefore please us in fantasy football. So Kenneth Walker, we're going to watch most here because if you're looking for someone who could break in with the RB2 floor and break into RB1 situation, say Kenneth Walker ends up in Tampa, where they're clearing house there potentially with Leonard Fournette and the rest of their backs being a free agent. That'd be a great spot for him, even without Tom Brady and that offense not being what it was. There with Brady, Walker, and that volume alone can be pretty big here. So we want him to land in a spot where he goes there versus in a committee situation or has a chance, say, behind a Saquon Barkley, who could just be hurt again after fighting through a season pretty much healthy here. That Barkley fading, they may not want his big contract. Walker could be waiting in the wings to have a extremely big role there should the starter go down. So Really excited about Walker and his prospects here. He should be the first running back called here, probably in the second round. I would say somewhere in the 50s there. Being a conservative approach there, I think he could go in the 60s as well. But in the 50s, I think that's where you'll see the running backs usually get the attention. There's no first round backs to me in this draft. There's just too much value at other positions. So Walker starts there in the second round as the highest floor and the highest ceiling, quite frankly, here among these running backs in the draft. A lot of these other guys have some limitations elsewhere. One of those guys is Isaiah Spiller, not a relation to CJ, who was a first round pick of the Bills out of Clemson. Isaiah Spiller out of Texas A&M. Now he's a little bit different. He's more of a power back there, has a lot of good kind of instincts there between the tackles, no nonsense running style here for Isaiah Spiller. So pretty good there, good finisher. So he can score a lot of touchdowns. He's not going to be the guy that's going to catch a lot of passes for you. I don't think he's going to see a lot of late down work, but an early down thumper, that's what you're getting from Isaiah Spiller. So he's got to go in a good spot where someone can take over the receiving duty, maybe even split evenly on those early downs. So a lot of things to watch out. Maybe the Bills will look at him. I know the Bills were the ones who drafted Spiller, but they also drafted in the past Travis Henry and Marshawn Lynch. So they like that hammer. They do like what Devin Singletary did. But Singletary could use the no-nonsense, like straight-up power back here to complement him after Matt Breida and pretty much Zach Moss have not worked out for them there. So that's the type of back you're looking at. Isaiah Spiller can be a guy, if he gets up in the right situation, to get 6 touchdowns, something to that level. We know things are open in Detroit a little bit, so maybe he would fit in well there, complementing DeAndre Swift, who's very good at the passing game. And so there are a lot of places Spiller can go, but I think you have to look at a place where there's an established kind of receiving back option there for third downs. And really, you could even go to Antonio Gibson as a good pass catcher. I know they have J.D. McKissick there for the Commanders, but Spiller and Gibson would also make for a good combination. So there's different ways you could look at it here. The Eagles also should be in the market for a running back here. It's not knowing what they have between Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard and Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott, who's a free agent. So that's another team we're going to look at, as well as the Buccaneers here. And Bills, a lot of teams are going to be trying to find that second back, and Spiller is one of those types here. Now, I think Breece Hall of Iowa State could be a big touchback here. He's got some explosiveness to his game. He's a pretty good receiver, so a little bit different than Isaiah Spiller. Can you trust him in the bigger down situations here where you need a bigger back? That's going to be a question here with Breece Hall. But very productive career with the Cyclones, a big part of what they've done offensively here, playing off Brock Purdy and a very solid passing game as well. So good explosive offense there. We know there's a lot of ties there with Matt Campbell and what he was able to do there. So offensively, there's a lot of good transition to the NFL. So Breece Hall just needs to land in the right spot. If he gets stuck in a change of pace committee type role, it's going to be a bit frustrating for him. Again, I'm pretty confident Walker and Spiller are going to have very defined roles here. Hall can be looked at by different teams in different ways. They could look at him, okay, we can get this kid 20 touches, or is he more a 10 to 12 touchback initially? So he does have, again, some home run qualities to his game, which I like. Just nimble on his feet is going to be good in his zone blocking scheme, the way we saw Elijah Mitchell thrive as a fifth-round pick for the 49ers. So there are a lot of things I like about Breece Hall. He's a plug-and-play back and can end up in a good spot here. And I wouldn't count out the 49ers, speaking of them, with Mitchell and Trey Sermon coming off injury, and Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson as free agents here, that they would also look for a different type of back. So look out for Breece Hall. Maybe he would be good there with Javonte Williams and move on from Melvin Gordon. I look at Isaiah Spiller complementing Austin Eckler well with Justin Jackson being a free agent. So you just have to look, what are these type of backs going to go? I think Hall is more a supplementary back. That means just a guy that's going to play behind another guy that has a good, well-rounded skill set versus a complementary guy who kind of fits what the other player doesn't give you out of the backfield. So, yeah, these are 3 pretty good running backs at the top. Now, is there anyone who blows us away like in past drafts position we've seen with Alabama, including Josh Jacobs and Najee Harris and Damian Harris, and going back a little bit, Derrick Henry? No one quite at that level, but these three backs are pretty solid. I'd say if you're going to look right now, regardless of where they land up, these guys are going to have the most fantasy football relevance without even knowing that here. And the others are a little bit dependent on landing in the right situation, the right spot, either behind an injured or limited front player there in a committee, or just in a situation that's wide open for a feature role. So we'll see how it plays out for the next wave. Guys, before we get into that here, I've got to tell you that BetOnline is your source for betting this off season. And look, we know that football season is over, but the basketball season is just in the home stretch here. We just had the NBA All-Star game. So it's going to be awesome that we finish up the season strong heading into the playoffs. We also have something that's a little bit mad in March, if you want to call it that. The NCAA tournament coming up as well. So good opportunities here to get in on BetOnline. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for our sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news, whatever season it is. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, including all international events and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we will continue here looking at our top-rated running backs in the 2022 NFL Draft Class in a moment. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL, Locked On Experts, covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday, less than 30 minutes. It's free and available, just like this show, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, it is time to look at the next three running backs on my list. So on my big board of the top 100 here, I only have 6 of these guys. I want to look a little bit more at some of the other ones, but 6 that I feel good about. Another one I feel that has good value here. It didn't pan out for his former same-named Notre Dame product, Dexter Williams, but Kyron Williams, I've seen him make a lot of explosive plays. Notre Dame backs are pretty solid in the NFL, that they can be with a Swiss Army knife and do a little bit of everything. We know in Notre Dame, they're always helped by great blockers, going back to Mike McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson. They just are always pretty solid up front. So these guys come in a pro-style system, reading blocks well, just getting all the yards that are available here, and well coached as well, that they can be complete backs here if needed. Now, Kyron Williams, more of a home run hitter here for Notre Dame than some of the maybe pass backs here, but good overall back here. So a little bit like Breece Hall, he's a little bit ahead of Williams overall in his skill set, but Williams is not far behind. That's why I like him. It's a good program for sure for running backs here, and he's just a solid guy. So you put him in a handcuff situation behind a veteran, you plug and play him, he will probably produce here for you well. So he has to land in the right blocking situation. He's not going to carry a running game at all, but if he has got a dangerous enough balanced offense with the passing game providing a threat, Kyron Williams is going to be pretty good here. So like him a lot here out of Notre Dame for sure. Now, another guy that I liked more as I looked into the process, Tyler Allgeier. This is a kid from BYU. He used to be a linebacker, so that tells you how hard-nosed and tough of a runner he is. He can come at you and be strong, finish in the red zone, but he's also got a little bit of juice when needed in the passing game. So Allgeier, I think, could be a steal here at this position. When I look at it, he may not be done staying at number 5 on my rankings. He could move up a little bit, maybe be right behind Walker and Spiller. So I really like Allgeier. I think there's just something about him. He runs with some conviction here. Good compact power back, which I'm looking for there as well, because that means they can stay durable, but also have a little bit of juice when you get them in the field. Again, being a former linebacker, it helps him understand the second level, reading his blocks, getting there, how to make linebackers miss as well. So interesting prospect, hybrid of power and speed and explosiveness here. Gives you a little bit of everything. He's going to be value again. Like Kyron Williams, if he lands as a number 2 in a good situation, watch out for Tyler Allgeier of BYU. This next back is just a bruising back. We've seen Bo Scarborough and Derrick Henry out of this program in Alabama. Brian Robinson Jr., he just looks fantastic in terms of just bowling over people. If you get some good blockers, this guy can hold up for a good 25 touches and be pounded between the tackles, have some really good success there. So that's why he's moving up. Some people have him all the way up if he can show a little bit of nimble abilities and crossover into some receiving skills. But right now, just on the power running alone, I think he's a guy with upside. So when I look at Williams, Allgeier, and Robinson, I look at Walker, Spiller, Hall being very strong second-round candidates. I think these guys are day two as well, looking at the third round, but no later than the fourth here with these three running backs, William, Allgeier, and Robinson there. But I like Robinson quite a bit. Alabama backs are pretty trustworthy in the NFL. I know Scarborough was just a cup of coffee there for the Cowboys and Lions and didn't really last all that long because he was kind of a big power back. But you also saw Derrick Henry and see what he can do, the multiple yardage champion here for rushing in the NFL. So Robinson, I think, combines a lot of good attributes. You don't really have too many Alabama backs who are very one-dimensional here. They can do a lot of different things. Derrick Henry can catch passes if you need it, but he's just so good as a hammer, and that offense in Tennessee is so run-heavy. So Ryan Robinson could fit anywhere. That's how these Alabama backs operate here. So could he end up there with one Josh Jacobs? They're cleaning some house here with Jalen Richard and maybe get Jacobs more into a dedicated receiving role for Josh McDaniels. We saw what the 1-2 punch delivered there within one Alabama back, Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. So the Raiders, that would be an interesting fit for Robinson. He also makes sense there if the one team that already has Henry looking, the Titans, if they needed a better upgrade here, Darrington Evans has not been able to stay healthy. They got by a little bit with Donta Foreman and Dontrell Hilliard, but Robinson looks like a bona fide backup and maybe a successor for Henry if the foot continues to be an issue here in 2022. All right, there's a breakdown of my next three running backs. These are the top six in my overall top 100 there, the big board at sportingnews.com. You can check it. We're going through it all week here. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll look at wide receivers. We'll still look at running backs here. I've got five more to talk about more in rapid fashion in our final segment. Before we do that, I got to tell you about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Winder often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same auto part from a chain store or dealership? Just take a Honda Odyssey fuel pump. You can get it from $353 at a chain store, but it's only $216 at Rock Auto. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you need there: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. So check them out for yourself. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Find them at rockauto.com. All right, it's time to close the show. Looking at a few more running backs of note, we want to keep our eyes on here from a fantasy football perspective in the 2022 NFL Draft. David Pierce, a kid from Florida, good, well-balanced runner. A little bit of Cam Akers in him where he wasn't worn down. Akers out of Florida State. Had limited carries, so the volume isn't too bad here, and we'll see. Akers hasn't really helped his durability there, but I think David Pierce can do a little bit of everything here and help a team. So another good zone blocking runner when you're pretty balanced on your feet and can be pretty agile. So look out for Dameon Pierce out of Florida here to be effective. Again, a little bit of Cam Akers in him, different school, rival school, but there's some of that here in his background and playing style. Now, where do you go between the two Georgia backs? I mean, Georgia just has a abundance of talent across the board here. But actually, their offensive skill talent is limited here just because of some of the things that happened with injuries. We had the George Pickens injury at wide receiver. We don't really have a quarterback option really coming out of Georgia for this one. So these two backs are interesting. James Cook, You know the last name? That is Dalvin's brother. That's right. So speaking of Florida State, we just talked about Cam Akers. Now you have James Cook, who went to Georgia here. So the Cook brothers. So a little bit of that. That's probably going to help Cook get some good looks in the NFL. He's more of an explosive back, but the problem with him is he's not the greatest in pass protection and the solid little things. He's going to get better at that, but he can be a guy that reels off long runs, and the pedigree having Dalvin as his older brother is certainly going to help James Cook here. So something to watch here. Maybe they put him in Minnesota if they're disappointed with Alexander Madison. They bring in the other Cook and have almost a twin situation here with their backup to Dalvin Cook. So some things to watch there. But he would be the better all-around back candidate here if he can improve the pass protection a little bit, be more decisive in running between the tackles. Now, Zamir White, we know what kind of career he had at Georgia. He's a bowling ball, a very strong runner, their finisher. So going back to Isaiah Spiller style, that's what you're going to get in Zamir White. He's a bruiser. He's going to pound between the tackles, be effective. But as we saw with Cook and White, they have to go into a complementary committee approach to be effective. The Georgia backs, I mean, you've seen them in the NFL do pretty well. You've had Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel and good stuff there following Todd Gurley. So there's just a lot of punch here with the Georgia backs here in the NFL. But I think going power, we've seen it's been pretty effective with Chubb playing that role here. We've seen other people succeed, Michelle as well. So again, Zamir White, I think he's going to have more trust from some teams, but I think James Cook has a little bit more upside overall here at running back. Now, another Z, we go from Zamir White to Zonovan. Yeah, that's the name. Zonovan Knight from NC State. Now, here's a guy that I think is untapped potential. Capable receiver, not used much in that capacity while with the Wolfpack, but just a pretty good all-around, again, running back with some good size. And he has a chance to be a complete back. Of all the people at the back end of this list, I talked about Allgeier and Robinson there in the previous segment. Williams has been pretty good. He checks all the boxes there from Notre Dame. But Zonovan Knight, still a lot of untapped talent there. He could still climb up the boards a little bit more as we go forward in the pre-draft process. We get to the combine. He has a chance to kind of make more people impressed. Maybe he'll ride off the Ikem Ekwonu, the awesome left tackle prospect there at NC State, play well off him on the pro day to look impressive. So Knight definitely helped by the blocking there at NC State, but a very good nimble runner is all right with a lot of untapped ability, crossing over as a change of pace and helping in the passing game. Now, last guy I look at is Hassan Haskins, a very strong back here. And he's a guy that I'm going to watch climb up the boards, a kid from Michigan. We saw him. He's a pretty good power runner. He's going to get the yards that are there. Again, good zone blocking candidate as well. Plug and play him in those situations. But he's going to need some good blocking help like he had at Michigan up front to really maximize his skills, but can do a little bit of everything there as well. I think he stands out more with kind of the power approach. I think it's kind of a dichotomy with him because he is a smaller power back and he's a little bit too big to be the change of pace back. So he's got to find the sweet spot in a good complementary role. Like I said, more complementary than supplementary here to fill in the gaps of another player. So that's the thing. He's going to be a complementary back to a pure power person or to a third down one. And that gives Hassan Haskins some versatility here to land in a good spot in the draft out of Michigan. All right, there you have it. There's a look at my top six, the ones that made it in the big board there for me at sportingnews.com at running back for your 2022 draft class, as well as expanding that to go 5 deeper here. So good options there. 11 running backs. I'm sure more will be taken. We'll look at some of the return game, but certainly a pretty decent class of running backs and some that are definitely going to have fantasy football impact sooner rather than later. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We're free and available for you on all platforms. Don't forget, tomorrow we will talk about the wide receivers in the draft. A lot of good stuff there as well. Nice size across the board here. Some teams having multiple options here. Check it out here. We'll break it down from a fantasy football perspective, the top wide receivers in 2022 NFL Draft. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Speaking of draft, Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Chris Crocker bring the NFL draft to you every day with inside analysis on college football prospects and the NFL front offices. It's free and available, just like Locked On Fantasy Football, wherever you get your podcast. So we're talking draft. They're talking draft. Check us out here on the network. And we go to advanced scouting off-season mode here for you on Locked On Fantasy Football. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow with our look at the wide receiver rookies to be in the NFL 2022.